great. He's getting tired. You're going to get him. Not yet. Oh, beautiful fish. Beautiful fish. Oh, that's it. That's it.
That's what the micro turbo can do. Look at that big old right there. Micro turbo, 3/4 inch piece of worm, you'll see the results. That's about 6 pounds. Developed, tested, and perfected by me, Kel Kellogg. Turbo Flashers. Turbocharge your trout trolling today by going over to fishhuntshoot.com and picking up a set of my Turbo Flashers. You won't regret it. They'll help you catch more and bigger fish. They've done that for me, and they'll do that for you. Howdy guys, Kel Kellogg here. A lot of you guys are gonna find this video very interesting because over the years I've gotten the question a lot of times, if I put X amount of weight on my rig and I troll at X speed with X amount of setback, how deep is my rig running? And I would often respond to those questions like, you got to go out and test it, man. I don't know. I've got some ideas, but I don't know. Well, last week I had some calm conditions. I was up at Collins Lake. After my clients were gone every day, I went out and I did a bunch of depth testing while trolling various weights on my line. Now, I have a unique situation up there. I have a boat in the water. This is a time-consuming thing, I'm not gonna lie. And I have a long peninsula out there that gradually slopes into about 60 feet of water. So I had a place to do the testing that was pretty much perfect. There are a ton of variables in this sort of thing. So I tried to set up something that was very kind of average in terms of, you know, speed, setback, tackle, all of that, okay? And I'll talk more about the variables as we go on. Here's what I used for a rig. I used a black bass weight rod, graphite rod, very sensitive rod, very high-end rod. It was one of my cousin's tackle rods because I needed that sensitivity. I wanted to be able to feel right when I ticked the bottom, okay? I topped that rod with an Abu 5500. I filled it up with 10-pound test trilene big game line, just standard copolymer line, pretty average line for trout trollers that are using mono. I took that line down to a bead and a trolling swivel, just like I set up all my rods. And I used for weights, I used weights similar to this, that my weights are actually still in the boat. I used torpedo-shaped or bullet-shaped halibut weights that were a 1/2 ounce, 1 ounce, 1.5 ounces, 2 ounces, and 3 ounces. I snapped the weight onto my trolling swivel. I put a crosslock snap on the bottom of the weights. From there, I used a 40-inch, 8-pound test leader, and then I had to come up with a lure. What lure am I gonna run? I didn't want something that had a lot of resistance through the water because that will make things run shallower. But I didn't want something really tiny like a Dick Knight spoon that's not really gonna replicate what you're trolling most of the time. So I decided to just run an average size spoon, a naked trigger spoon, and my first inclination, because I didn't want to hang the bottom, was to take the treble hook off. But that was something I could control. That would have made the lure act in a different way, and I just didn't want to do that. I wanted to make this as real world as possible. So instead of removing the treble hook, I just took a pliers and I bent the hook points in. I kind of rounded them up so it wouldn't grab the bottom so easily, because, you know, this experiment was going to consist of me hitting the bottom time after time after time. The speed, okay? I played with some different speeds, but I said the average speed is gonna be 2 miles an hour for trout trolling, 2 miles an hour, okay? And that was with my GPS, that's speed over ground. And I kind of pre-tracked this peninsula to find some areas of various depth ranges, okay? So what I did is I put, you know, various weights on there, and I would go across the peninsula and I would see when the sinker hit, and then I would move a little bit deeper until I lost the bottom with that rig. I tried to do it at a time when there was very little boat traffic and very little wind, and I tried to keep the boat as straight as possible, because if the boat is going left and right, back and forth, that's going to affect the depth anytime you're turning. So let me get into the results in just a second here. I see my little icon is beeping. I need to put a new battery in the camera. I'll be right back, and we'll get into the numbers. We'll get into what I found. Okay, I'm back with an apparently fully charged battery, but we shall see. That one I was just using said it was fully charged, and obviously it wasn't. So back to the testing, using the rig that I described, using my GPS to determine my speed, being out on the water at times when there were very few boats, times when there was very little wind, and trying to keep the boat in a very straight line, pulling a trigger spoon just like that. Here are the depths that I achieved on repeated passes, when the sinker hit the bottom. So 100 feet behind the boat with that rig, using a ½ ounce of weight, and I am reading this because I recorded all this. I got all these trials I recorded. The average depth using a ½ ounce of weight when I struck the bottom was anywhere from 3 to 5 feet deep, okay? ½ ounce, 100 feet of 10-pound test, trolling that trigger spoon with a ½ ounce of weight, my lure was running 3 to 5 feet deep. When I went up to 1 ounce of weight, same variables, 100 feet back, 10-pound line, everything's the same, but I was using 1 ounce of weight. I would strike the bottom anywhere between 7 and 11 feet deep, 7 to 11 feet deep. 1.5 ounces, 1.5 ounces, I would strike the bottom 14 to 18 feet deep. With 2 ounces, I was 15 to 19 feet deep. And finally with 3 ounces, and I thought this would be much deeper, with a full 3 ounces of weight, I was only running between 19 and 23 feet deep, which really surprised me. I assumed, if you asked me, before I did this testing, how deep would I be with 3 ounces of weight? I'm thinking 25 or 30 feet deep. Not the case. 19 to 23 feet deep is what I determined. So let me run through those one more time, and then let's talk a little bit about variables and different factors, because I did try some different speeds and different setbacks. So 100-foot setback, 10-pound line, trigger spoon, 40-inch leader, 8-pound fluorocarbon on the leader, trolling swivel, and a bullet-shaped weight, okay? ½ ounce, I hit the bottom. A ½ ounce is going to run 3 to 5 feet. 1 ounce, 7 to 11 feet, 1.5 ounces, 14 to 18 feet deep, 2 ounces, 15 to 19 feet deep, and 3 ounces, 19 to 23 feet deep. Trolling speed has a significant impact on depth. If I cut my speed from 2 miles an hour to 1 mile an hour, which feels like you aren't moving at all, with a ½ ounce of weight, I got down 9 to 13 feet deep. So that's pretty much, more than double the depth, okay? And that was consistent throughout. If you cut the speed in half, you can pretty much double the depth that you're running. But that is a very slow troll. Conversely, if you speed up to 3 miles an hour, you'll lose about 1/3 of your depth, okay? So if you're trolling, and this is good to know, but this is intuitive. You should have, assumed this. If you're trolling along and you have 2 ounces of weight on your line and you see the bottom coming up and you're worried about getting snagged, goose the throttle and you are going to rise in the water column. If you're driving along at 2 miles an hour and you see a bunch of fish that are below your gear, as soon as you see them, cut back to 1 mile an hour or ½ mile an hour, allow that rig to sink, and then get back up to 2 miles an hour, and you're likely going to pull that lure, up through those fish or past those fish. Here comes a vehicle, and I'm going to pause for a second, and we'll get back to more variables that I explored. Well, he was cool. It's a very dusty road, and he saw me up here filming and slowed down so he didn't kind of bury me in a big dust cloud. So, getting back to variables, setback has an effect, but there is definitely a sweet spot, okay? You are going to achieve your deepest depth, based on what I did, from 75 to 100 feet behind the boat, 75 to 100 feet back. That's going to give you optimum depth. If you start scoping your line out to 150 and 200 feet, you will gain a little bit of depth, but not much. And that's due, I assume, to the line's resistance through the water. Now, maybe you could get deeper with braid. I don't know. I didn't test that. In fact, I'm pretty sure you could. If you ran, say, 10-pound braid instead of 10-pound mono, I think you'd be deeper, but you'd need to go out and do the testing. If you ran a shorter setback, shorter than 75 feet, you really started losing depth. But 75 to 100 feet back, you could achieve the numbers that I just threw out to you guys. The final factor that affected everything was lure resistance, okay? And what I did, I swapped out the trigger spoon for something that has a ton of resistance, one of my trolling flies combined with the action disc. And that action disc, it has that cup face, so it's got a lot of resistance moving through the water for a small offering. In size, pretty compact, just like the trigger spoon, but it has a lot more resistance. And when you start pulling stuff with more resistance, you lose depth, you lose a significant amount of depth. So those are all factors that you need to consider. But my numbers are pretty solid. I've checked some other guys' numbers online. My numbers jive with their numbers pretty well. So I'll recite those one more time. If you're interested in this, you should write these numbers down because, like I say, I've been asked this question a lot of times, and I was able to put in the time to do the testing. And it takes some time. You got to straighten out the boat. You got to do repeated passes. You got to say, I hit the bottom there, move out, try to find water that's a foot or two deep, or I didn't hit the bottom, or I did hit the bottom. So it takes a little bit of driving around. Incidentally, I got some strikes on the trigger spoon without the hooks being able to hook the fish. And when I got those strikes, I thought, oh, I'm hitting the bottom. No, that was a fish. So that was kind of fun too. But anyway, here are the depths I achieved. Once again, using 10-pound test mono, a trigger spoon, a 40-inch fluorocarbon leader of 8-pound test, 100 feet behind the boat, a ½ ounce, 3 to 5 feet deep, 1 ounce, 7 to 11 feet deep, an ounce and a half, 14 to 18 feet deep, 2 ounces, 15 to 19 feet deep, 3 ounces, 19 to 23 feet deep. If you cut your speed in half, you will get down significantly deeper. If you bump your speed up, to 3 miles an hour, 2.5 miles an hour, your lures will run shallower. So that's my numbers. Your numbers may vary. If you really want to dial this in, figure out what gear you're using. I would encourage you, if this is going to be your means of getting down, I would probably run with 10-pound braid because it's going to be significantly thinner than 10-pound mono, and I think that's going to show in the results, although I didn't test that. So find a spot in a lake, find a peninsula that's kind of snag-free, but a place that you can do the testing. Really helps to have a sonar unit with a GPS so you can lay down those tracks, follow those tracks. I had the split screen going on so I could monitor the speed, the depth, and my track. And then I had a notebook and I was able to jot down the data as it occurred. Did this testing over 3 days in the afternoon. It took me several hours, but hey, I was out driving around on my boat. If you have limited fishing time, it's going to be poison out there, I'm telling you, because it's going to take a while to determine this. But once you determine these numbers and write them down, they're pretty universal for the tackle you're using, the line you're using, stuff like that. Anyway, that's all I got for now. I wanted to share that with you guys. I am kind of a trained scientist. I have degrees in psychology and stuff like that, and we did a lot of laboratory stuff. And this kind of testing, it is ripe with variables that can throw everything out the window. So, it's not real scientific, but it's as scientific as I could do it out on my boat at Collins Lake. And the numbers I gave you, they're a pretty good baseline. They're a pretty good benchmark for what you can expect to achieve with various types of weight with a pretty, low drag lure. Throw a Dodger or something into the mix, everything goes out the window. I'm Cal Kellogg. I will catch you next time right here on YouTube. I hope you found this information useful. If you're looking for tackle, if you're looking for gear, if you're looking for trigger spoons that you can, snag up on the bottom of the lake or maybe catch some fish on, go on over to fishhuntshoot.com. Get out there, do your own testing, experiment. That's the heart of fishing success, experimentation. And I will catch you next time right here on YouTube. I want to thank you guys for all the success, and I will be back out on the water in a couple days. I'm Kel Kellogg. You have a great day.